So sometimes, right, we want to forgive somebody and we may have tried it, and then it's like it doesn't work. It's like we've done it, we've written the letters, we did everything, Doc, that you told us to do, and we still can't let it go. How do we let go? How do we forgive when we absolutely have tried and it doesn't seem to work? Stay tuned. Let's check it out. Forgiveness is a very complex thing, right? Because trauma, or the negative actions, are stored almost as a picture in our brain. So every time that trauma is thought about, right, or that act or that betrayal, right, it brings the image up, and attached to that image are all these emotions, right? And so if they're negative emotions, you feel it again, almost like a post-traumatic stress thing, right? So when you try to forgive somebody, right, we try to move the emotional energy over to the cognitive side of the brain so that it loses some of that emotional power so that we can process. So that's why we write letters. That's why we do the process that we talked about in an earlier video about how to forgive. But sometimes we do all that and we still seem stuck. When my father died years ago, right, he owned a large ranch that was worth a lot of money. Well, he had let somebody kind of hold the paperwork on it, and they had forged it, and we found out about it, and people were telling us we should sue and we should fight, but it was a family member, and I didn't want to make that big a deal because I knew this battle would destroy me. It ended up giving my uncle a stroke, a heart attack, and he just never recovered from it because it was bad. It was a terrible offense. But yet I didn't want to carry it with me. Yes, I was angry, I had hatred, I had bitterness, but I knew I had to forgive them. But man, there was nothing in me that wanted to. But I knew that if I carried that hatred with me, it would destroy me. So in the beginning, it was really hard. I did the steps that we talked about, right? I wrote a letter forgiving the person, I wrote a letter forgiving me, I wrote a letter forgiving God, and I let it go. And I did that several times, but it still was in me. So then what did I do after I couldn't let it go? Well, here's what I believe works. At least here's what I believe worked for me. Number one, I prayed about it every single day. I prayed that God would soften my heart and so that I would let it go, so that it wouldn't destroy me and it wouldn't destroy everybody around me. I also made it a point of telling myself, look, this was a decision I made to forgive the person. And it doesn't mean I was ever going to have a relationship with this person in the future because that bridge was burned. But I wasn't going to bring them with me so that I'm constantly thinking about it and feeling about it. So I had to pray about it and process it every single day. And I had to imagine myself taking this offense. I would close my eyes and I would literally hand the offense over to God and then let go. Because I knew that God would do the very best that He could. And I wouldn't. So I constantly was handing it over and handing it over and handing it over. Now it's a little bit easier if you don't have contact with the individual. But sometimes it's a family member or somebody that's really close, sometimes a partner or a spouse, that does something that's just atrocious, and we choose to stay with them. And then we choose to forgive them. But the offense keeps flashing like a siren in our brain. And we look at that person and we feel it again. Well, here's the reality. If somebody that's close to you does an offense and you forgive them, they're excited, right? Because they're let off the hook and they're like, yes, they've forgiven me, I can go forward. And more than anything, they want you to forgive them so that both of you can go forward. But the problem is their forgiveness of themselves, right, might be easy. When you let them off the hook by forgiving them, right, they feel relief. But then they keep going. They want everything to be back to normal. And now it's left on you because you know life is never going to be normal again because you're never going to forget what happened. Now, you may say, I don't want to hold it against them, but you're not going to forget about it, which means you have to grieve, right, the belief that you had before this offense took place. So if your spouse had an affair on you, right, and your belief before then was that, man, the one person I can trust is my partner or spouse, and then they betray you, by having an affair, whether it's an emotional affair, whatever the affair is, right? Now you have to grieve what you had hoped for, because you had hoped for this protective spouse, a long-lasting relationship, things to be great, and now that's gone, that's shattered. So you have to grieve the loss of what you thought you had. You have to grieve the loss of what you thought the future was going to be like. And it takes time. On average, I tell people that it takes roughly about a year to grieve. So you have to cut yourself some slack. There's going to be good days and there's going to be bad days, right? And you have to constantly remind yourself that you've done the forgiving. Now, it helps if your partner has gotten help. So if they've done something, if they've gone to counseling, if they've changed behaviors, if they've made themselves more accountable, that can help you in the forgiveness, right? And letting it go. If you feel like they haven't done anything, then it's going to be impossible to forgive them. I don't care what you do, because they're going to keep triggering you. So if they care and you're going to be in that relationship, they have to do some work as well. If they're doing what they need to do, it's much easier for you to forgive them and to truly let it go. Relationships, believe it or not, only gain strength if they have conflict. Now, hopefully it's not a conflict like that, but any and every conflict can be helpful, can be productive. So when you have a conflict and you successfully resolve it, it brings you tighter and closer and stronger, and that relationship deepens. So when you've had some conflict and you overcome it, the relationship can grow to an incredible depth, even if your partner has had an affair. Because as long as they heal and you heal, that strength that comes from going through that, right, can make you a stronger team. It doesn't make it a perfect team. Just makes it a stronger team, so that no matter what happens, right, you can continually work on letting it go. Sometimes though, even if you do all of that, right, it still is there. And that's where going to therapy really makes a difference. Don't be afraid of going through a therapist, right? They're not going to judge you, at least they shouldn't. You're just going there so that a third party can kind of hear and help you process through your thoughts, so that you can vent and let it go. Because you don't want to vent to your partner if they've done something, because that's not going to help, right? Vent to the therapist. And they will help you on this healing path, a healing journey. You can get better, right? You can heal, but you have to constantly work at it, and you can't give up in the process, right? So if you have any questions, write them in the comments below. If you feel stuck, write them in the comments below. Anything we can do to help, let us know. And hey, if you liked this video, hit like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it. Send this video to someone that you believe needs to hear it. We are determined to provide hope and healing to everybody in this world so that we can move forward together. Because it's our belief that together, right, we can change the world. Have a good day. Doc out.